So I'm here with Michael Franti, and this is Zach from Teacher Gamer, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. We're about the same age, so a lot of my questions I feel like come from me discovering who you are as an artist and as an activist. A father, a brother, a son, an artist, a poet, a musician, a film scorer, a mover, shaker, entrepreneur, collaborator, activist. These are kind of the things that I think about when I think of who you are. Anything you would add to that?
No, that's too many things already.
It's a lot. We're here in Bali, Indonesia, and I want to talk to you about games, about life skills, about being playful, and just to get just an open conversation. And any stories you want to share are always really interesting and important. Can you remember the first game you ever remember playing?
Probably hopscotch. My family, there's 5 of us kids, and both my parents are teachers, so there wasn't a lot of like buying expensive toys or anything like that. It was usually just like chalk or like hammer and nails or, making stuff. My father was a wood carver growing up, so there would always be like wood things around that we could mess around with. But hopscotch was something that all the kids in the family would participate in. And I remember being really young in the street and drawing the chalk in the sidewalk and trying to figure out which foot goes where, and the bigger kids being able to seemingly do it with ease and me having to do it with great effort and left brain, left foot, right foot, and not really quite being able to get it. So that's my first game playing memory. And then sort of just imaginary games, playing, building forts in the house and, getting under the bed and that became a whole world there that we would play, whatever thing was, in our imagination.
And so you had lots of siblings.
Yeah.
And so you guys got up to it, like a lot of playing together. And
yeah.
Where were you in that group by age?
Well, of the kids I was raised with, I'm 4th out of 5. But then there's also 4 other siblings that I have that I didn't meet until I was 22. So of those, I'm like 7th out of 9.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And do you remember, what was your favorite game? Or do you remember going back to certain things and liking to play it again?
I love Lego, where it was a big thing in our house. And this was before Lego, like, you just got a box of Legos. There was no like instructions, there was no special pieces that put a face on a Star Wars character or something. They were just bricks, and you had to really be imaginative and just try different stuff to create what you wanted. And definitely didn't look like a car, just look like a bunch of stuff, and then you stuck some wheels on it, and I was like, oh, this is my, whatever, my space car or whatever. So it was a different time. I'm 57, so things were not as, I guess, predictable, the outcome, when you played with Lego.
How do you feel like, or could that have influenced you later in terms of putting things together as an artist? And did you feel like now a lot of things are ready made, right?
Yeah.
You can do things by code, you can get all sorts of samplings, you can get all sorts of things, but back in those days, you had to put things together in a different way.
I think that play is a huge part of everything I do. I never go into any work of art or any creative endeavor that I'm doing thinking that I have this exact outcome that I'm going to find. I always am like, throwing paint up against the wall basically and seeing what comes out. And that is how I approach recording. Building this hotel, it was a similar thing where, we try something and we look at what is the outcome? How does it feel? What does it how does it resonate with me when we put this color in this room or this sofa in this room? And if we didn't like it, then we change it, and kind of be playful and trying to get things the way that feel right. And that's always what I'm trying to achieve when I think of a piece of art, is like music is just the sound of feelings.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get to a place where, this feels right to me. Not, is it going to be a hit on the radio? Not, are my fans going to like it? Not, well, maybe if my wife likes it or my kids like it, that's important to me. But I do think of it about what feels right to me.
And you have kids now, and
Yeah.
you had, I want to say, like, you have what, older child?
I'm like two generations of kids, basically.
Right?
Yeah, almost 3 generations. So my oldest is 36, Cappy. My middle child, who is non-binary, is 23 in a few weeks. And my youngest, Taj, is 5.
Yeah.
So there's some gaps in between there that, it's always been that I've always had a young one, basically, so, and that's something that has kept play one of the centers of my life. And, being a 57-year-old with a 5-year-old, it's like seeing the world through his eyes so much of the time. It keeps things fun.
For each one of those kids, can you think of a game that they taught you or that they brought to you, and you learned kind of a new level of play or a new thing?
Taj, the youngest, he's grown up here in Bali, and he speaks both Balinese as well as Bahasa, Indonesian, and English, and a little bit of Farsi because my wife is Persian. And he has this fascination with barong, which is, for those of you who have no idea what that is it's kind of like if you imagine like a Chinese dragon, but with just 2 people. And there's the barong and the ronda, and they're 2 different sides of the yin and yang. Yeah.
I don't know if he's there.
You got it. He's up there. Yeah. On your shirt. They're 2 different sides of yin and yang, and in Balinese culture, they don't believe that there's good and there's bad. There's just dark and there's light, and you have to be able to balance both things in order to create harmony in life. And so the 2, barong and rongda, are constantly in battle, and so it's a game of costuming. It's a game of battling. It's a game of being ferocious. It's a game that's physical and playing in the barong costume. So Taj has had like 3 different barongs since he was little, and now he's up to this big, huge 2-person one that I can barely fit in, but I do. And it's really neat to see how Balinese culture, all the kids are really into the mythology, and they even make YouTube videos about it. There's a whole like culture of YouTube videos about barong, that kids just get in their barong costumes and they go out and they film stuff and they put it up on YouTube. And so I would say that is another, I guess it is a form of gaming, YouTubing, and scrolling, which I have mixed feelings about, because I feel like it numbs you to things that are in the external, outside of the box world or off the screen world. If you scroll until you find something interesting, it's really hard to just go spend time with the creek or the tree, or like watching a bird or playing with a frog or something like that. And at the same time, it is fascinating to see all of the different creativity that comes through, especially the channels that he's on, that he's surfing, and he's finding all the stuff that's made by other kids of his peer group, 5 to 12-year-olds.
And what about with Cappy? Can you think of something that he brought you or that you remember?
Cappy, we played a lot of sports, like actual sports. So He was really into. We both grew up as 49ers fans. I grew up in the Bay Area, and so I was a 49ers football fan, Golden State Warriors fan. We used to go to the Warriors games when we buy that $15 ticket up in the very, very, like triple R section. And by halftime, they'd be losing so bad, we could almost, make our way down to the lower level, sometimes even actually onto the front row court seats. And now I'm thinking like, man, those are like, $10,000 seats today. But we loved playing sports. And, sometimes it would be, football or baseball or just dodgeball in front of the driveway, or biking, skateboarding, rollerblading. He was really like super physical kid, and still is. And now he's at 36. He's a avid meditator, and he will go and do retreats where they sit for 4 hours at a time. And it's remarkable to me that he's evolved into that person from the like super hyperactive, quote unquote hyperactive child. And having raised 3 children who, at least during their childhood, identified as boys, there's a certain wildness that I think is important, a certain physicality that is really important. And I was always labeled as like a hyperactive kid in school, and I feel like a lot of my schooling was to try to like get me to sit still or focus on this worksheet or something, but my mind was so out beyond just the margins of the worksheet. And I find now as an artist and as an entrepreneur that I have to live out there, and thank God that didn't get totally, taken from me, through the education that I had.
Do you have any history of role-playing games, or did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that?
I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons, but I did lots of theater, and our theater was a lot of it was like workshopping, doing improvisation and role play. And also, as a kid growing up, we were constantly improving, telling stories and jokes and making each other laugh and trying to find ways to be entertaining to each other. And so I consider that part of my education of like playing characters and playing a role. And when I first started in music, I loved punk rock because it was, at least on one of the ethos was to be yourself and to not be playing a role. And yet I found that as I started getting into performing on stage, that I was starting to play a role, and it was becoming less of who I am, not because the emotions I was expressing didn't come from me, but because I wasn't expressing all the other emotions that were in my rainbow of who I was. And so as I grew from the early stages of like angry punk rock and hip hop into evolving out beyond that, I realized that anger about the world and the system is just one real small sliver of who I am, and that in order to really be my authentic self, I have to talk about my sadness and my fears and my insecurity and my celebration and my joy and my love and my desire to party and be expressive in that way.
Cool. When you got, I don't know if you got signed to or they just took you on for a record, but with Alternative Tentacles, did you know East Bay Ray or Jello Biafra? How did that relationship come about?
I had met Biafra through performing at the Gilman Street Project in San Francisco, which is legendary punk rock, independent place. It's basically just a warehouse, and they've got a little PA in there, and people from the Berkeley punk rock community would all hang out there. And when I started the Beatniks, we weren't part of that scene at all. We were just doing our own thing. In fact, we were more in the scene of like the San Francisco nightclubs in the 80s that were, you know, after hour dance places and real raves, not like I'm going to a designated place where there's security and a cover charge and it stays the same place, but an actual rave where it's illegal and you're just doing it until they get shut down, you know. We were more part of that culture. But some people saw us performing with all this metal and banging and sparks and grinders, and I was playing bass, and it was super aggressive, and they said, come play at Gilman Street. And so we did, and we started playing there, and Biafra saw us perform one time, and he didn't offer us a record deal, but he said, you know, if you guys ever do make a record, then, you know, consider putting it out through Alternative Tentacles. And so we did make a record, and there was this guy named Eric Cope, who was amazing artist, singer, writer, musician, producer, and now he's runs this hip-hop magazine called Murder Dog. But back then he had this magazine called Wiring Department, I think, Wire Department. And it's like a zine, you know, like fanzine kind of thing. And anyway, he was into our music, and so him and his wife moved into a van and gave up their apartment so they could finance our recording.
Wow.
And it cost $700. And we went and we made this record for $700. None of us had $700 at that time. And so we didn't have any more money to put it out, like actually press up records, and so we sent it to Biafra, and he was stoked on it, and he signed us to Alternative Tentacles.
That's cool. And then that moved, or from there, and you were with, I want to say, is it Ron or Rano?
Rano, yeah.
Yeah, and then you guys kind of started to go into Heroes.
Yeah, Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy. Yeah. So I after the Beatniks, I started another group. Beatniks only made one record, and did some songs for some compilations and stuff. And then I had a friend named Matt Callahan who was in this band called the Looters, and they had been signed to Island Records. And he came to the guitar store, Subway Guitars, that I was working in at the time, and he was like, Mike, have you been making any music lately? And I said, yeah, you know, I've been working on a few things. I could, you know, play you this little demo I've recorded. And he was like, cool. And he goes, well, I'm working with Island Records now, and, you know, why don't you just, you know, send some music to Island and see what they said? And I was like, fuck Island Records, man. They're like a major label. Fuck major labels. They're fucked up. You know, like the full-on punk rock, do-it-yourself attitude, you know. And he said, well, why don't you write a letter of, like, everything that you would want? Like, if in a perfect world, like, what would it be, you know? Like, and so I wrote this letter on, like, a yellow legal pad that I wrote all my lyrics on. And I said, here's my tape. You know, thanks for listening. I'll only sign with you if you give me X amount of dollars and full creative, artistic control. I want to own the publishing. I want like all this stuff, like a list of demands, you know. And so I sent this cassette with Matt. A few weeks later, I get this call from this guy, Human Maj, and he goes, "Hey, is this Michael Frianti?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Hey, I just wanted to talk to you, but I work at Island Records, and, you know, I heard your tape." And he goes, but before any of that, I just wanted to talk to you because I just thought your letter was so ballsy to ask for all these things without even, like, most people just write and go, please listen to my music, will you please sign us? And so he goes, I just thought even if I didn't like the music, I might want to have you come work at Island Records. So we ended up getting signed to Island, and, you know, they basically did everything we asked in the thing. And Chris Blackwell, who was the founder of Island, who, you know, brought Bob Marley to the world, and U2, and Grace Jones, and Tom Waits, and Roxy Music, so many incredible, you know, Cat Stevens, so many incredible records that he brought out. He played our song, television, the drug of the nation, for U2. And they saw the video and they loved the video, and they were just about to go out on their Zoo TV tour. And so they hired Mark Pellington, who was the director, to do all of the content for their video screens. And it was that tour was the first tour that ever had video screens on the stage, like massive video screens. And so they used that song as their walkout song for that show. And then they invited us to be the opening act. And so we went from playing, places like Gilman Street to 150 or 200 people in punk rock clubs all around the country and in a band, to opening up for U2. And the first show was at RFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and 50,000 people.
Wow.
And
how did you handle that?
We had fun. It was just fun, like we I don't think I appreciated what a monumental jump it was, and we weren't getting paid very much money, so it didn't feel like our lives had changed in any way, and financially we were still driving around in a van. But it was really cool for me to learn from that band. And like, for example, I saw them perform the song One for the first time ever. And they played it on that tour and that first show. That was their first time performing it out live. But even before that, I saw them working it out in soundcheck. And they still were not, they're...
Oh, it hadn't gone to the record, to the actual album yet?
The album had gone out.
Oh, okay.
But they were still working out how to play it live,
Right.
And so they'd go through half the song and then stop and talk about it and go through this, more of the song. And I got to see some of their creative process and how, there they are, about to play for 50,000 people and still, don't quite know the full song, and where the peaks and the moments of the song are. And so it was really neat. And then also to see the power of melody. I was always just a lyricist and a poet when I first started, and it was like I would just shout into the microphone basically. And then I saw Bono sing a melody and then hold the mic out to the audience, and the whole 50,000 people all singing the melody back. And I got that same feeling when I was a kid growing up and going to church, which I hated. I hated going to church, but I loved the moments when the songs happened and everybody would sing together, and I would feel this resonance of like all these voices, just this roar of sound, and it felt really empowering and beautiful and emotional to me, and touched me in ways that I had never experienced as a child. I'd be in tears just from the sound of the songs. And I saw, U2 do that, and it changed me because, they were also a very vocal group about social issues and environmental issues, but they were doing it through a way that was different than the way I was doing it. And I realized that there was something more to music than just expressing, I guess, an opinion, but connecting with values, and so that people could share in the experience of reaffirming their values.
So then on from there, and I remember buying Home. I would say it was like in 94.
Yeah. 94.
And I was at University of Oregon.
Yeah.
And so many songs in there really connected with me. But I remember one of the ones because I was hanging out with people who were DJs, and a crime to be born
in America.
Yeah, and Crime to be Broken in America, and just the opening line.
Take the needle off the record and shove it in a mono. Yeah.
And so I have this question for you, which was, I feel like I was wondering how much of your work was autobiographic, and then at the same time, or was it bringing voice to the voiceless?
It's all autobiographical, but it's all metaphorical for what I see that's taking place in the world. But when I grew up in like I said, both my parents were teachers, and we had 5 kids in the house. So it was a hand-me-down house. We weren't kids that went skiing on the weekends or did anything like that. We just, but we didn't lack anything. And when I moved to San Francisco, I moved into a neighborhood where there was a lot of lack, and there wasn't opportunities for people, and I saw how challenging it was. Another song on that album, "Hole in the Bucket," how homelessness was just all around me everywhere, and how I would wake up in the morning and I'd open my door and there'd be someone literally sleeping on the doorstep. Literally every day there would be 1 or 2 or 3 people just right in front of our house, because we had these grates in the ground that had steam that came out of them. So in the wintertime, they would put their cardboard over these grates, and it would be like a heating thing underneath it. And so, it gave me this different sense of how people in the world are living. And then as I started to travel around the world, I saw other levels of poverty and other ways of living. And living here in Bali, we live in a very there's great disparity between the haves and the haves not where we currently live. And yet when you go to the other side of the island, into North or West Bali, you see poverty that is way more intense than what we have here. There's nothing, here we have trees, and people can make handicrafts and carve, and they're able to grow rice. On that side of the island, it's dry, and it's becoming drier each year because of climate change. There's not even trees for people to make stuff from. And so as I've seen different levels of wealth and of poverty, it makes me feel a sense of empathy and a sense of wanting to try to help to improve lives and to bring awareness. And the thing that we're most proud of here at Solshan, beautiful rooms, beautiful, grounds, and we employ 150 employees, and we know that for each employee that we have, there's probably 6 or 8 people at home who are living from the salaries of those people that work here for us. And that goes into all of the decision making that we do here. For example, during the pandemic, we didn't lay anybody off. We decided that we were going to just spend everything that we'd saved over the years to keep our staff employed. And if it ran out, we would sell this place. Unfortunately, the pandemic ended before we had to do that. But we feel a deep responsibility to the people that work here.
Yeah,
and make this place special.
I remember also, again, this would be back in the 90s, I think, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it. I remember reading an article and seeing pictures, and I was imagining it in my head of you going into prisons and actually spending time with inmates and talking to them about and I would say you were doing activities that were empowerment through their voice.
Yeah, we did. We would perform. We've performed as a band in a lot of prisons, and then I've also gone in as just like a solo artist, or I play a few songs and then work with young people and writing and expressing themselves and learning to speak up, and especially in youth detention facilities. Young people's voices have been just trampled on, and whether it was from their home situations, ahead of getting locked up, but then definitely in getting locked up, they're told what to do and where to go and how to act. And again, like, they're boys who need to be wild and need to jump around and need to run and need to be aggressive and need to cry and need to share what's going on, and they can't. They don't have space to. And the culture of the facility is still like very authoritative, and so you have the administration, and you got the guards, and then you've got the bigger, larger, physically stronger kids pushing down on the other kids, and so it's just a horrible setup for people to be able to express themselves. And so we would just go in and work with young people in writing and then delivering their poetry.
Tell me again. This is so long ago, but I remembered it and it always stuck with me. But I remember hearing the story where you would go in and have them kind of like hum a tone, and that it would like create a resonance that actually would get the guards like stepping back because it was like so intense. Is that kind of?
Yeah, what I would do is I've done these voice workshops over the years where we start with just having people make sound, and sometimes it's and I've done this in prisons and I've done it in yoga classes, and everywhere there's like I read this thing that standing up in public and speaking is for the majority of Americans is a greater fear than death, and so to stand up and speak and say something out loud of whatever is your truth it's really hard to get there. But if you just stand up and you just make a sound, and then you start to give it a little melody, so you just go from to and then you start to sing the sound, and then you start to say the things. I am Michael, I'm from this place, this is something I love, this is something I hate, and you just start to sing, and it becomes easier through song and through sound. And it is really powerful to see the effect that it has not only on the person who's doing it, but everyone else in the room, including guards in a prison. And it's a great exercise for all of us to learn to speak our truth.
And as you go out into the world and you've traveled extensively and you played all over the place, how do you feel like the direct engagement with the audience becomes a playful experience?
Well, people say to me a lot, it looks like the audience is just like, super focused on what you're doing, and they're just throwing their hands up in the air. And how do you make this, like, how do you achieve that? And the answer is that I ask them to, or I'll just say, throw your hands in the air, and people will do it, And there's something that's liberating about singing and about throwing your hands in the air. I actually wrote a song called Hands Up to the Sky, which it's going to be our next single on this new record. And it's about how the act of putting your hands up is like this release of letting go. People do it when they cheer at a baseball game. People do it when they testify in church. People do it when they're arrested. What do you say? You say put your hands up so that you're in a position of vulnerability. And there is a power in that when you're able to do that for yourself, to throw your hands up, be in that position of vulnerability, to sing out loud, to dance, to move your body freely. That is an act of grieving. It can be an act of forgiving. It can be an act of celebrating. It can be an act of so many ways of letting go.
I heard that people who were born blind, when they actually succeed at something, they actually put their hands in the air, having never ever seen anybody else do it.
Amazing.
Right. Yeah. So to go to that. I mean, your performances are super high energy, and there's a lot of infectious joy. I've been to a number of your shows over the years, and can you remember like a particular memorable moment, like where it just went to the next level?
Well, there's so many. I mean, it happens at every show. There's always moments of release. Carl and I talk about it a lot, about how our favorite part of playing a concert is when you first walk into the venue, and maybe I'll go out and I'll watch the support act performing for a little while, and I'll see the crowd, and I'll see people who are kind of just carrying whatever weight that they've had of their week or months or even a year of waiting for this night to come out to see a show, and not just my show but any show. And then the music hits and you see their shoulders just drop, and you see smiles come to their face, and you'll see tears come down their eyes. You'll see people high-fiving strangers or hugging a friend that they haven't actually hugged in months or years. And it's that feeling of togetherness that is really why I do it. And we built a music venue here, and we called it the Togetherness Lounge because that's what we wanted. We wanted to create that feeling of shared emotion and dialogue, and there's just something really powerful about people sharing in the same expression of emotion in the same place at the same time.
Your album Stay Human, it's really got high vibe energy.
Yeah.
But I also know that you have this serious side and this background, and especially with your previous political and activist side. How do you balance that serious side and the playful side?
Well, I feel like in order to be anything to be sustainable, you have to have play in it. And there has to be moments of dance and appreciation of the steps that you're taking, because everything along the way is difficult, and if you look at, if you were to go to a butterfly sitting on a tree and say, is this tree alive? The butterfly would say, I've been here my whole life, all 5 days, and I've never seen the tree move. So I've scientifically concluded without a reasonable doubt that this tree is in fact dead. And then you come back to the tree 5 years later, you'll see it had bared fruit, and that the fruit had been shared by all the animals in the forest, and that the seeds had been scattered by those animals, and more seedlings had grown up that are going to produce fruit in the years to come, and that the tree is very much alive, and in fact the entire forest is alive. And when we're talking about activism, a lot of time we're thinking of moving mountains. It's like, if we look at that mountain today, we go, that mountain has never moved. You ask the old man who's lived on the top of the mountain his whole life, he said, I never saw it move one time. But if you came back hundreds or thousands of years later, you'd see that the rivers and air and wind and rain and erosion had caused incredible change, and that mountain is in fact alive. And so for us to keep going in our desire to bring about change in the world, we have to include play in order to make it be something that we still want to engage in.
Nice.
And when it gets too serious, we tap out. And I built Soulshine. Our motto here is to inspire change in people so that they may inspire change in others, and that's why we built this place. And change is something different for everybody. For one person, it's like, man, I got to quit this job I hate, and I really want to start my own company. Another person's like, been living with their mother and watching them, their body slow down and their mind go through Alzheimer's. And another person is like, I really want to lose 4 pounds and fit in my jeans again, or whatever. For everybody, change is a different thing. And rather than tell people what change that I feel that they need, or that I feel necessarily that the world needs, I want to inspire people to make the changes that they want to see in their life. And I think that's where I'm different today in my activism. Like, I definitely have very strong opinions about the world and about politics and the way things are at. And I also leave space that there are people who might feel differently than me that still have things in their life that they want to change for the betterment of themselves and others. And it's not up for me to decide what those things are, as long as they're not infringing on the freedoms of other people to make their changes.
Yes. Having kids yourself, what do you value in education for them?
I value balance, and for example, I feel Taj at age 5, he's far more educated than I am in language. You know, he speaks three languages fluently, and I have I've taken. I'm third level Spanish 1. I've taken Spanish 1 3 times. And I've learned a little bit of Bahasa, enough to have a basic, morning conversation with someone, and so he learned that through the street, through playing with other kids, and not in school. And then in school, he's learning to the sounds of the letters and how they go together, and basic mathematics, and at home he's also learning art, and he's learning music and watching me do what I do. And so every environment has a different place that you can or different ways that you can learn. And my views on education in the sort of classic academic sense are that it's really its window is rapidly closing on that style of education, because people, especially during the pandemic, learned that I don't have to necessarily be somewhere to learn. I can be anywhere in the world and learn. And universities that have been about creating exclusivity, and the whole admissions process and these super high fees to get in, that's going to go away, because people are going to be like, why am I paying all this money and going into debt when I can learn the same stuff online, or through Zoom, or through through sitting with somebody else. And now the way that careers are, we're not just trying to craft a role for somebody to play in a company, and they're going to eventually age out at that same company, and they're going to eventually get their office, corner office, and their gold watch and their retirement. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. And so with Taj, I really want him to be somebody who understands how to learn, not someone who's just given a list of facts to memorize. But how do you teach yourself? How do you problem solve? How do you find ways to connect with other people? How do you connect with nature? How do you do it in a way that serves more than just yourself, but serves the community and the planet? So education today is completely different, and I'm excited about it.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, what do you think the future of education looks like?
I think that if I, here would be an analogy. I believe that the future of energy is that everyone becomes their own energy plant. That everyone has, solar on their rooftops. Everyone has a car or a vehicle that has solar built into it. That every phone, you turn it over, on the back of it, there's a solar panel there. You never ever plug it in. You just sit it out in the sun, and it does this thing. And that the energy companies become organizers of that energy in the same way that happened in the music industry, where it went from everyone having their own collection of CDs to then everything being online, and people can tap into it as they need to, or as they want to. And that there will be more energy that's created than is actually needed, and that the energy companies will just be that Napster service, like, I need some energy today and I'm going to get it, but it came from somewhere else. And I feel like education is the same way, that people will need to and want to self-educate, and that it'll still involve schools, and can still involve places where people socialize and learn in that way. But as people get out of the younger ages of school, that everyone is going to need to figure out their own skills and their own way of doing things. And I think that a really strong way of doing that is through mentorship. And it used to be that, an elder was like this. My friend Chip Connolly talks to us about this a lot. He says, an elder used to be somebody that you'd go to who's like this old man with a gray beard. He's been farming for his whole life. And he'd say, hey, when do I put my corn in? He'd say, well, there was a late frost this year, so put your corn in May. Don't put it in late April. And now you just go to Google and you go, when do I put my corn in the ground? And it tells you, like a million things will come up for that. And just because you have all this information at your fingertips doesn't mean that you know which of those things is most important or most imminent for you. And that's where a mentor comes in. A mentor can say, well, here's all these things that you want to do, and here's all the ways that you can get there. Now, which of those things do you need to do first in order to get to the second, third, fourth step, and fifth step to get to where you eventually want to go?
Guide you.
Guide you, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's often the hardest thing in anything that we do. For example, in building this hotel, I started with 5 rooms, and I was like, well, I want it to be a yoga studio, or want it to be a yoga place where people can practice yoga and hit the reset button. So, well, where should we put the yoga studio? And I was like, well, if I put it on the top of the building, or if I put it on the bottom of the building, and everybody can come in easily, and the rooms can be on top, and it'll be easier to get to the yoga studio. But if I put it on the top of the building, it'll feel more important, and people will have a better view, and they'll be, our hearts and spirits will be more open that way. So I put it on the top, So those are the kinds of things that, like, in your life that you have to think of, like, in what is the most imminent step to get me to where I'm going next. And otherwise you can try and try and try and try and try, but you can learn in 5 minutes what took someone else 50 years to master.
So how important is it for games and
Yeah.
play to be part of education?
Well, I think games and play need to be part of everything. And that's why when we built this yoga studio, the new yoga studio we had, I was like, how do you get out of the yoga studio? What would be the best thing? The best thing would be to jump in the water. You're so hot and sweaty, just jump right into the pool. And I was like, but wouldn't it be a lot cooler if there was a water slide into the pool after your yoga class? That would be much more fun and much more playful. And so that's what we did. So I believe in the power of play to open your mind to new ideas. I also believe in the power of stillness to do the same thing. And in playfulness, we create like this freedom and this attitude of like, I'm going to try any movement. Any movement is okay. There's anything I try, there's nothing that's off limits. And in stillness, we create the desire for our mind to find things to play with. And when we're never still, our mind is constantly being inundated with things or attacked with things, so we don't ever think beyond them. And when our mind never has play, we have all these ideas that we've been thinking of, but we never act on them, and we never manifest them. And so I feel like it's important to have both. That play and boredom are the yin and yang.
I say the boredom, like when the kids are like, I'm so bored, you're like, oh man, I wish I had that time. Like just to be still and be like, and because they always, unless you give them a device, they sit there bored, and then something comes.
And they find something. They start playing with their hair, and they see something on the ground, and they find a leaf. Pretty soon the leaf is a boat, and the boat's going down a river. And now the leaf's a surfer, and the leaf's, and that's how when as adults, we also need that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important for us to find, not necessarily like blank sheet of paper meditation, but to take moments in our day when we go for a scooter ride, and you're just on the bike and you're just going, and your mind is clearing itself, or you take a walk in nature, or you get on your yoga mat, or you go for a run, or you go and sit down by the beach and just, zone out, But those moments of stillness and of zoning out, it's the times, there's that old adage of like you can't see your reflection in boiling water, but as soon as the water becomes still, everything becomes clear. And especially as creatives and entrepreneurs, artists, and everyone is that. Everyone is a creative and everyone is an artist. You have to have that stillness to be able to generate freshness.
From our conversation, starting with hopscotch, actually didn't get to ask you about wood carving. Did you do some wood carving? Was that a thing in your life?
I don't actually carve wood, but if you look around Solshan, there's wood carving everywhere, and it's kind of an homage to my dad because he taught me this appreciation of it, and it's one of the things that I've experienced in Bali over the 16, 17 years since I've been coming here, and we've been in business here for 13 years now. It is a land of creative geniuses, and there's in every aspect of what they do. Like, for example, this morning I was doing yoga and I was watching out here in this rice field of how they bring the ducks out, these working ducks who go and they live in this little patch of the rice field, and they let them out in the morning and they go out and they walk around, and then they come back to they eat the pests in the field and they fertilize it with their poop, and then they come back and to their little roost there. But if you go down to the roost, there's an offering there, and there's a small temple for their experience. And in that offering, there's this incredible artistry of weaving and of even in the most simple agrarian life of ducks and poop. It's like there's this artistry that is found there that is so amazing to me. And that when I see that in the carving, I'm like, man, we have some of the most incredible artists in the world. Like, let's not just put a door on our hotel. Let's let someone carve it.
A piece of art.
It becomes a piece of art. And I see, and just like anywhere in the world, how our screen culture has come into Bali now, and a lot of the young people are not doing the arts that their fathers and grandfathers and grandparents and grandmother and all of their ancestors had done this art for generations.
And they're splitting their time.
And now they're on the phone, or they're going into the tourist economy, which are I think it's great, and I want families to and young people to experience whatever they want to choose in life. You shouldn't just have to be a carver, but it does give me a deep appreciation for those artisans and wanting to preserve it in some way, and also support it financially through any way that I can. And so I love the artistry of Bali, and I learn from watching, not necessarily doing the carving, but just the creative process of watching the carving happen. Because most of what we have here at Soulshine has been done, actually right here, these posts that were carved for the DJ table were done right there. And I just sit and watch it.
And so that idea, even as you were saying from the beginning, of just getting a box of Legos, and then in the same thing of just banging against industrial metal, and that leading in poetry, and that leading into being a father, and the wildness and physicality of being with kids, and and the punk ethos that you said is to be yourself, and then watching the process of you two, this larger experience, and then connecting with values, and that moving you into what it's like to think about how problems can be solved, being playful, spending time with inmates, and especially youth that are struggling to find their voice, and then talking about how energy can be something that's your own and that you can generate from yourself. As again, I'm kind of interpreting what you were saying about eventually self-education, mentorship. My last question for you is, as a teacher and community builder yourself, what would you say are 10 or around 10 skills you think a teacher must have in their toolkit in this new era?
I think the number one attribute for any person in any field is to be a skilled listener. And it's impossible to, especially as a teacher, and I grew up with 2 teachers, you can't do it the same way for every kid. And there's some kids that can really need to be, pushed and come on, you can do this, stay with this, we got this, let's go. And there's some kids that really need to be left on their own to do their own thing. And they're, some kids learn through reading, I have friends who, when they get a new piece of musical gear, they'll read every note or every word of the pamphlet that describes how to use it. And that, I'm just like, I have no idea. I don't even know, I can't put that together at all when I'm reading it. But if I just touch it and turn it on and start pushing some buttons and go, oh, this does that, and then if there's somewhere I get stuck, then I'll look and try to figure it out. Or better yet, call somebody who knows and then ask them. And I learn better that way. And everyone is different in their learning. And so to be able to listen is super important, to be able to be malleable and flexible in that way that you understand, to be able to be empathetic, to put yourselves in the shoes of any of the people that you're teaching. I think to maybe even higher up, but definitely one is to be a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. As a teacher, you have to be a lifelong learner, and in order to do that, another word would be curiosity. Curiosity is the elixir of life. It's the thing that keeps us young. We all know somebody who's 38 years old who seems like they're 90 because they're just doing the same stuff and they never seek anything out. And we all know someone hopefully we should know people who are 80 who seem like they're 30, not because they can still run and jump and do all this stuff, but because they're constantly finding new things, and they're hearing about something that's taking place at the library, and they get in the bus and they drive down to the library or go to the Asian Art Museum because there's a new display up, because they're constantly wanting to find something new. I think that another thing would be just a desire to give. That was the thing that I saw with both my parents growing up, was they didn't leave their, it was impossible for them to leave their work in the classroom. My mom at home, it was like a big deal. Like if we ever threw away a roll of toilet paper after it was the actual roll that was left, it was like, don't throw those away. Those are things that I use in my class. That was like, and she was constantly just trying to find ways to engage with her kids. It's
like resourcefulness.
Yeah. And then with the main subject we've been talking about of playfulness is huge. Being able to have fun, make the experience of learning be magical. I think that's another word. It would be magic, because creativity. It's like I'm about to go get on a call with somebody in a few minutes, and we're having a songwriting session over Zoom, and so we don't know what we're going to write about. We don't know. We haven't talked to each other today. Haven't talked to each other in a few months, and we're going to get on a Zoom call, and by the end of it, we're going to have a song that is going to be in the world somewhere in some way that wasn't there before. And through the words and melody and vibration and chords and rhythm, it's going to evoke an emotion in ourselves and hopefully in somebody else that they never knew existed. And that's the magic. That's like the alchemy. And as a teacher, you have to be an alchemist, because everyone in your class comes in with this different set of circumstances before they got there. Which some kids didn't have breakfast. Some kids, dad has been in prison or mom has been in prison. Some kids woke up with a head cold. Another kid woke up really excited to go to school and everything was going great. And then all this group of kids come together in this one place, and you have to be able to take all these things that seem like they're difficult or problems, and then you've got to make it into something magical that is greater than the sum of all. And that's when you win. And I've had teachers who did that for me. No, I think I'll close this by saying that I had this one teacher his name was Father Huerta. He was my English 101 teacher at University of San Francisco. And somehow I'd managed to get through 12 years of, from kindergarten through high school without ever learning how to write an essay properly. And so on the first day I walk into Father Huerta's class, and I was playing basketball at the university, and I was just, not super academic minded to begin with. And he says, everyone in my class either gets an A or an F. And there's nothing in between. And so I was just, in my mind, I'm like folding up my books, and I'm out the door, I'm like, I never got an A in anything. Like, I can't win here. And he goes, what I mean by that is I will not let you hand in anything that's less than an A work, your best work. And you can stay after school with me, you can knock on my door in the middle of a rainy night, I'll meet you at a cafe on the weekend, like, it doesn't matter. You can call me any time of day, any time of night, and I will sit and work with you on your essay. And so we did, and he taught me how to write a thesis and how to really hone it down and how to create the body of the paragraphs to substantiate what you're saying, and then to come up with an amazing conclusion that draws it all together, and how to use nouns over instead of adjectives, but you use colorful words that are visual things that help you to describe what you're saying. And he turned me on to the beat poets of San Francisco, and I got to meet, Bob Kaufman and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg and all these incredible writers, and he'd take me down to City Light bookstore on the weekends, and he taught me how to write. And that's where the whole idea of the beatniks came from, that of the beat generation of poets. And so I had that experience with him, and that became how I wrote songs. A chorus of a song is just a thesis of an essay, writing, whatever it is, and then whatever your thesis is, and then you're just creating verses that are the paragraphs that support what you're saying in the thesis. And so years later, I get a call from his twin brother, and he says, Father Huerta's in the hospital, and he's actually in hospice now. He has this really fast-forming move of cancer. And so I go see him, and I said, how you doing? He goes, I'm coming down the last days, and I've been a lot better. But the doctors said to me, it's moved into your testicles now, and but if we cut off your testicles, you could have 6 more weeks to live. And he said, what do I need testicles for? I'm a fucking priest. Cut them off. So he got 6 more weeks to live, which is a description of the playfulness also. So I was sitting there singing some songs to him, and every couple of days I go visit him as he was winding down the last days of his life. And one day, he would sort of be singing along to the words, and when somebody dies, their breath becomes fainter and fainter, and their ability to speak becomes softer and softer. And so in the last couple of days, he was just mouthing the words. He couldn't get any breath out to use his voice. And I said to him, Father Huerta, it's been 20 years since I seen you last. How do you know, all these songs? And he said, look under the bed. So I looked under the bed, and I pulled out these big, thick binders, and I opened them up, and he had every CD that I had ever made. And I was really moved by that, and but it was a reminder for me of how important it is, like mentorship, teaching, and how you can have this incredible effect on the trajectory of someone's life just by helping them to learn something, a new way of thinking about things. And he did that for me, and I would never be, the artist I am today. I wouldn't have this, Soulshine Hotel. I wouldn't be touring around the world if I didn't know how to organize my thoughts into an essay and put them on paper as a song, or as an idea for a business, or anything else, and as an idea for a nonprofit. To be able to organize your thoughts in that way is the greatest skill that I learned, the most valuable skill that I learned from anybody.
Wow. Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
And I didn't say that before. I was thinking about part of the Disposable Heroes was Jack Dangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still in contact with him?
I haven't talked to Jack in a while, but I about a year ago I was thinking about him, and I followed him on Instagram, but he just doesn't post that much. But yeah, he's an amazing,
Meet Me Manifesto.
artist.
Like that was like such a big something between industrial and then, as you were saying about the raves, just like getting code rings and going to this, because I grew up in LA and then went to Oregon, then went to San Francisco, and so much of that experience was there were so many changes going on. It was constant change.